What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 79 of Week in Review. My name is Sean, and on this week's show, we're talking about the art of self-defense, ESPN NFL 2K5. I'm going to convince you to fill out a bracket for September Mascot Madness, and we'll look forward to this week's new releases. Now, you might think it's a little bit odd that there's a 15-year-old video game on this week's show, but that's also, the reason it's on the show is because it turned 15 years old. I streamed an entire season of this game playing as the Green Bay Packers using 1-minute quarters on Saturday, July 20th, which was the actual 15th anniversary of the game. The actual date of the release of the game, July 20th, is one of many interesting things about this game. July 20th, when it came out, was 3 weeks ahead of the Madden that year, which was Madden NFL 2005. And it also retailed for $20 right out of the gate, which is an absurd price. So it simultaneously put itself out 3 weeks ahead of Madden and was $30 cheaper. So if you're an NFL fan, you're sitting there and you're like, why would I wait 3 weeks to pay over double what I could pay for this game right now? And these things would be gimmicks if the game wasn't good, but the game actually is really good, and the game holds up surprisingly well. It was interesting going into having the idea of streaming like an entire season. I was like, oh, I don't know, like if I'm gonna have the stamina or the interest in playing 16 games, but the game is still thoroughly enjoyable to just go back to and play. And that's, partially rose tinted glasses. Like, it's nice to go back and play old games and have that like nostalgia for when you were younger and enjoy things of that nature. But there was a genuine interest in continuing to the next week. But I had fun with the game. The games were interesting. I love the ESPN integration of it. It might be a little bit overbearing for some people, but I found it to be fantastic. The commentary is solid throughout. They have a pre-game intro, they have a halftime report, they have Susie Colbert reporting on the sidelines throughout, and they have a post-game report. And those are some of the weirder parts where when they show Chris Berman introing the game, or they show Susie Colbert on the sideline after the game, or even the halftime report, and the mouths are not synced up at all with the words that are being said. It's like someone told them to animate just the character model saying blah blah blah, and they're like, it'll look fine, it'll look good enough for what we're trying to go for. And that's the word I keep going back to, is ambitious. It's really ambitious to simulate a player interview, a player of the game interview after the game. It's ambitious to have a halftime report that actually pulls the highlights from the game, and even though there's still frames, and even though the lip syncs aren't even remotely close, it's still engaging and interesting. It seemed like the ESPN NFL 2K games were on such an upswing that Madden got scared. EA got scared, and they went and got the exclusive rights to the NFL football games and just killed the 2K franchise. And that really sucks, because if you look at what 2K has done with the NBA franchise and where it is now, it just makes you wonder how good these games could have been. It feels like they were on such a good track. They had good integration, they had good ideas. How does that translate into the next console generation, into the high def stuff with more powerful technology? Can they get the lip sync to be a little more a little closer? How does all that stuff factor in and make for a more engaging and more realistic experience? And where does that go even further down the line into the current console generation? What does that look like now? And we'll never know, because EA Sports has that exclusivity license. I don't think they're going to be giving that up anytime soon. I spent a lot of time talking about the ESPN integration, which I think is the highlight of the game. But the gameplay, it plays fine. It has limitations from a graphical standpoint, and it has more difficult passing than I really realized. As I was playing the game, I was remarking to myself, I was like, oh yeah, I was genuinely afraid to pass in this game, because it seems like the balls are extra bouncy from tip ups and that sort of thing. There are a lot of drops, and so it kind of leaves a little bit to be desired in the passing game, but the running game plays really well. I think the game, just from a presentation standpoint, is really interesting. I think it plays nicely. In the franchise mode, it has full episodes of SportsCenter, which run you through trades and through injuries and scores and the playoff picture. And when I was playing my franchise, I turned off the trade deadline. So for some inexplicable reason, the Tennessee Titans traded their starting quarterback Steve McNair to the Denver Broncos, even though the Titans were in the playoffs the very next week, or I think maybe they even got a bye or whatever. And it was just this super weird thing of I sat there and I went, what? Are you kidding me? Who would do that? This is absurd and awesome, and it's super cool to watch an episode of SportsCenter in a video game and just go what the hell is happening? This is crazy and this is nuts. And It's a really cool experience. And then on top of that, you have first person football, which is super interesting and a very unique game mode. Like, I think even if you take the rose tinted glasses off, I think there's still a lot to like with this game. Yeah, the rosters are outdated. The graphics aren't great. The lip sync doesn't make any sense, but there's a lot of cool stuff and a lot to like here. And it's really easy to see why this game is such a favorite among sports fans. ESPN 2K5 is a super interesting game to look back on. Obviously, the biggest question is going to leave, or its biggest legacy is going to be like, what if? Like, what if they had another 2 or 3 years? Could they have overtaken Madden? Like, where does this franchise go from here? Because it was on such an upswing, and it's cool to go back and look at this game and see some pretty, what I think are ambitious ideas implemented. ESPN NFL 2K5 somehow as a sports game stands the test of time, which is not a sentence I thought I would say. I really anticipated going into this game and being like, oof, this is really, really rough, and it was a lot more engaging than I thought it would be 15 years later. And it's it's a really, really great game, and it stands the test of 15 years. How will it look at 20? As for something more current, The Art of Self-Defense released in theaters last week. I mentioned it, I believe, 2 episodes ago, and I was kind of like fingers crossed that it would make it to my home city that particular week, but I figured it was going to be a 1 to 2 week delay, and I'm really glad that we got it, because this is one of the most like Sean movies. It may be the most like Sean movie I've ever reviewed on this show, because it is so fantastically wonderful, and I feel like it's just so up my alley. It's a dark and like sinister, quirky indie comedy, and not all of those words kind of work together, but for some reason this movie does. One of the problems I have with like the quirky indie comedy genre, which to me is a thing that like really exploded after Napoleon Dynamite, is that a lot of them feel like they're trying too hard to hit a certain tone, and a lot of them just kind of miss. This movie feels very natural in its like kind of just oddness of it, and it starts with a really great lead performance from Jesse Eisenberg, who plays a character who isn't particularly well liked at his job, and he seems to kind of keep to himself. One night on his way home, he forgets to get dog food for his dog, so he goes out, buys the dog food, gets mugged, and then joins a karate class. And that's kind of the tipping of the dominoes of this particular movie. You kind of just watch him as he takes his karate class, and you follow him through the events. 2 plot styles that seem to work really well for me are slice of life type movies, which is what this movie will qualify as, just kind of a domino tip and just kind of exploration of a series of events with a character, or a movie that has something on his mind. It gets in, it tells a story it wants to, it gets out. As we follow Jesse Eisenberg's character Casey through his adventures in the karate class, it starts to get darker and weirder, and it was something that I noticed that I really liked, but I do know that this movie is not for everyone. I like the characters in the karate class, and I think it does an interesting job of introducing us to them, even if maybe it does tip its hand a little bit too much at what it's doing. And that was one of 2 like very minor nitpicks, where there's like one shot that's like a little bit too long on a certain character, and then there's another event that happens later with someone very clearly like trying to hide something, but the way it's done is supposed to be like humorous and weird, but at the same time like give you that hint. But I think for whatever reason the shot that is a little bit too long and the shot where someone's trying to get into a room like just clicked with me, and I went, oh, like I think I know where you're going with this, but I still wasn't right. So it was a weird thing of like, I had like kind of the basic idea, and I saw a little bit of where it was going, but I still wasn't right about exactly what the reasons were for X character doing Y thing. It's a weird movie because I think it's a great movie to go into knowing very little about it, but I do think you need to know something about it as far as the tone is concerned to figure out if you're going to like it. This movie does a great job of setting things up early in the movie and then kind of bringing them back up, but in a very natural way, with the exception of the one thing that I kind of noticed was like felt like a little bit out of place. There were a couple of other elements that get set up early, and it's always fun to watch something kind of come back up where you're like, oh, they implemented that here, but then like you kind of forget about it because you get distracted with what else is going on, or maybe one of the characters gives like a seemingly definite answer to it, but it's not as definite as you would think it would be. but it also does a good job of using characters' actions or characters' words and having them come back into play later in the movie and watching them get defeated by their own perceptions, their own words, their own actions. I like the dialogue and the way it's delivered. It feels almost kind of like Spockian over explanation sort of stuff, and it's just, there's a great back and forth and great banter with the characters that I enjoyed a lot, and it's just, there's something about this movie that just clicked so well with me. I really like the tone of this movie. I like the style of humor. I like the way the characters are done. I like that there's a certain character in the movie, and the way they start talking initially, you're like, yeah, like I totally see what you're saying, and I understand like where you're coming from, and you are viewing the world differently. And then you watch them just chip away at themselves, and you go like, whoa, shit, like, nope, I don't, you went past like the line of like, this makes sense or is okay, and now you're in like some other weird world that like, I'm good, I don't need to be a part of it. The Art of Self-Defense is really weird and quirky and kind of twisted, and in a way that feels like it so easily could go wrong, and I could so easily be just annoyed with everything and so frustrated with like, oh, you're really trying to make this quirky, you're really trying to do it this way, but somehow it just nailed it every step of the way for me. I so thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I loved it. It's kind of weird because it's one of those movies where I sat there and I watched the trailer and I was like, it looks kind of fine, like whatever, and then it was like getting closer to coming out and I was like, man, I'm really excited for this movie. I'm gonna go see it as soon as it comes out, and that's what I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. It's not for everyone, but it definitely was for me. Finally, on the show, we'll look forward to this week's new releases, and we'll talk about the streams happening over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex. On Blu-ray, Alita Battle Angel is out. It's a movie that I liked, even if it has some real weirdness to it. I thought it was a cool, like, sci-fi adventure story, but there are parts of it that are super odd and don't make sense, but they don't really need to make sense, and I don't know. It's in some ways kind of just a big beautiful mess. A big beautiful mess of a movie. Put that on the box, whoever released that movie. Troublemaker Studios. Put that on the box. It's too late because it's out. Shit. Wish I'd come up with that earlier. Do the Right Thing hits Criterion Collection, and finally Missing Link is out on Blu-ray. A movie that has beautiful animation, but maybe kind of like a thin story. I liked it, but I wasn't super wild about it. I wanted to like it more than I did. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is in theaters. Tune in next week for a review of that movie, and we'll figure out how many times I accidentally call it Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Two movies that are very different from each other, released literally 16 years apart. I already called it the wrong name when I was previewing it for quarter 3 in preview. So, feeling pretty good going into that review for next week. And then Friday sees the release of Wolfenstein Youngblood. You'll be able to watch me stream that this weekend, and you can stick around for a review of it next week on Weekend Review. As for this week's streams tonight, if you're watching this between the hours of 6 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time and 6:58 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, because the stream starts at 7, you can head on over to twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex and watch the bracket reveal stream. Have I said twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex just yet? For September Mascot Madness, you'll be able to fill out a bracket, make your picks. I'll show off the teams, talk a little bit about how they did in the previous tournament, and then you can get a look at them so that you can see what horrendously dorky looking animal you're picking to win a whole tournament of mascot games. It's going to be a lot of fun, so check that out. It'll be up on Wednesday on YouTube. Wednesday is going to be more Super Mario Maker 2. I really enjoy that game. Really enjoy it because I just keep playing it. Friday, because I got caught up playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 last weekend on Friday and Sunday, Wolfenstein 2 got pushed to this Friday, which will get me all prepped for Wolfenstein Youngblood, and that'll take place on Saturday and Sunday if necessary. All those streams can be found over on twitch.tv/ShaunosaurusRex. So head on over there, hit that follow button so you can watch me play video games live. Last week I broke a stream because I pulled on a cord that disconnected the HDMI cable from the Elgato thing, and then it broke it on OBS, and then it turned my monitor a different color. It was pretty wacky. You can watch it live if you want. That's all for this week's show. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, scroll on down and hit that subscribe button. I almost said follow because I got my Twitch and my YouTube's all confused and bamboozled. You can scroll on down a little bit more, and you can let me know what you thought of ESPN NFL 2K5 if you played it 15 years ago or if you played it last weekend. You can let me know what you thought of the Art of Self-Defense. Let me know if you're excited for anything coming out this week. Wolfenstein Youngblood, Once Upon a Time in Mexico, all that good stuff. I fucked it up. I told you I would do it. I did it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's one, or technically two. Shit. Head on over to twitch.tv/Shaunosaurus Rex. Be sure to fill out a bracket for September Mascot Madness, and be sure to check back every Tuesday for more week in review. See you next week.